Honor to be before you. I will tell you that I cherish every moment that I have before you, knowing that who knows what tomorrow may bring. And we should always have in perspective how short our life is. And know that any day we see each other may be the last time we see each other. And that's why we should take advantage of every moment that we have to give it our best to each other and to God. I really appreciate the church here for your support in me being gone the past couple of weeks as I was in Romania preaching the gospel and helping the churches there. Two churches, at least the one in Bucharest and the one in Constanța, where I spend most of my time. But I thought that it would be, you would like to hear a little bit about what happened the past 2 weeks, because I have not been with you, and I certainly appreciate Rhett for preaching, and also Brent. I heard both Rhett and Brent did a great job, and I wish I was here to listen to them, but I was halfway across the world. It took me Friday 13 hours to get here from where I was. It was so brutal, and you know, I don't remember being so hard. And somebody said, you know what, as you get older it gets worse. It's like, what? It gets worse with the jet lag and stuff. It didn't used to get so easy. My son slept the whole thing yesterday, bounced back up, no problem. With me, it's like that chair is so tight, it's just horrible. I mean, it's horrible sometimes. Some of you travel long journeys, like 5 hours to Hawaii, and like your back hurts and your neck hurts, but try 13 hours. It's like, wow. The food tastes not so good, but I'm not complaining. I enjoyed my time there. So I think that they say that when you fly at such high altitude, taste buds are no longer right, so that they don't taste the food. Apparently, if you take a plain food and you eat it at here, it tastes normal, like normal food. But because in the air it doesn't taste so good, my son almost threw up in the plane because some food apparently didn't taste good for him. But anyways, who doesn't like eggplant, right? Anyway, so today's lesson is going to be, not lesson, it's going to be a report that I'm going to present on what happened the past 2 weeks. But really, a subtitle for my lesson is the power of a father's influence, because throughout I'm going to talk about the strength of a church, the strength of a family that comes through the presence of a father, and what makes a family, what makes a church strong is in the father's influence, is in the men's influence, women too, definitely. Today's focus will be on the men's influence. So I preached a lesson there, touching on this a little bit, on the influence of a father, because the bunch of men there, they asked me, say, okay, we want you to preach something. Well, what do you want to preach? Just name any subject. We want you to preach about women's role in the church. It's like, what in the world you guys make me teach about? And Alan, my companion, my other preacher, says, they want you to teach about telling women to shut up. It's like, really? In the churches or something like something. I mean, apparently there's some women there that are very vocal. And women love the women. Sometimes women can say things into your face, especially if you don't do things the way you're supposed to as a man, right? If you are a man and you don't act like man, if you don't do what men are supposed to do in the church, you may find a woman that says, you know what, you shouldn't have done that. Sometimes Romanian women don't have such a good tact, and Romanian women are known to have big mouth, especially Macedonian women, which there are some in the church. I think I told you this before, that in Romania, apparently there's a song. It's called that Macedonian women have a mouth as big as an oven door, right? So, anyways, this preacher said, they want you to talk about telling these women to shut up. And I said, well, okay. So I did have a sermon, but I didn't tell the women to shut up. I told the men to man up, right? But anyways, I'm going to touch a little bit about what I talked in that sermon today, and even through some of the Bible studies, because coincidentally, one of the things that the women asked is that we teach the men how to teach. It's like, really? It's like, so we did that, and I was involved in some studies about that. But Anyways, just a little bit about Romania. Romania, of course, is somewhere in Europe, right in the southeast of Europe, right along many of those other countries. Just to tell you an idea, that I put the map of the United States on top of it. United States is about 41 times bigger than Romania. Much smaller country. It's about the size of actually twice as big as Florida. Florida is not a very big state, but Romania is twice as big, and Florida has about twice the population. Now, actually has the same population as Romania, but it's twice as small. But anyways, beautiful country. I mean, it changed in some ways, and some changed. The way it didn't change. I like it better in some ways, and you say, what ways do you like it better? I'll tell you. My son can tell you. I have not seen one homeless person in Constanța. It's like, what is all the homeless person? And then I learned that actually they went into other European countries that are more permissive. They give them social benefits. So they say, okay, well, instead of being in Romania, I'm going to go to Switzerland, France, Denmark, other countries, because they have these fancy programs, like California, right? And then if you don't want to work, you can go there. But I enjoyed that, to not see tents and things. I haven't seen anything. The weather was beautiful. I was expecting to see some people begging for, all kinds of things like you do here. Here, unfortunately, California, you can't go anywhere, especially downtown, anywhere, to not find being assaulted. But I enjoyed that there. But many other things I enjoyed. But I have a picture here of the church. Most of the people in the church in Constanța, Biserica lui Hristos stands for the Church of Christ. That's me and my goofy son right there. And that's most of the people there, but of course some of the people were not there. I was there, as I mentioned, with Alan Williamson. Alan Williamson is definitely one of my spiritual mentors. He's known me since I obeyed the gospel. I obeyed the gospel as I was 19 years old, and he came in Romania when I was 21, so 2 years after. That was in 95. He came in Romania. I was baptized in 93, and then I worked with him in Bucharest. I was translating for him. I spent a lot of time in his family because he has an awesome family. When I was spending time with him, and I remember one time for a whole month, I went and I spent in his house, and I was helping him with the gospel being that he had translating and putting some material together, translating some material, and I really enjoyed how he treated his wife. I really enjoyed how he raised his children. I really enjoyed the dynamic in his family. To me, that was mind-boggling, because in my family, I'm used with men yelling, women yelling, and kids don't obey the parents, kids disrespectful to the parents, kids fighting with each another. And to me, it's like, what is this? I mean, the kids actually get along. You know what I'm saying? They actually do what the father says. Mother, they worship, the ground the mother walks on. And the greatest sin for the father, for the kids, is for the kids not to listen to the mother. I mean, it was a beautiful dynamic. I love that. And I said, when I grow up, I want to have a family just like this guy. So I followed him throughout life. Ever since I've known him for the past almost 30 years, you can imagine. He was about my age when I met him. He was in his 40s, and now he's in his 60s, and now I'm in my 40s. But he opened up a little bit about his family, because I spent with him only 3 years, and those are very powerful years in my life. They were very much becoming and seeing what a Christian family is supposed to be all about, dynamics between husband and wife, between children and parents. But one of the things he said to me that stuck with me that I wanted to share with you is because throughout the years, he has 4 children, by the way. 2 of them are preachers. He had 3 boys and a girl, but one of his kids fell away. And I said, very emotional to him, as you can imagine. I said, what happened? I mean, I had to find the right moment to say, what happened? And he said, you know what he said? He said, it's my fault. It's like, what in the world are we talking about? What did you do? I did not pay attention on this child. It's like, what do you mean? I trusted her, and I shouldn't have trusted her. Like, wow. And that made me think how, as parents, we have to watch our children. We have to constantly know what they're doing, know what they are in it. Don't just trust them. Trust, verify. Trust the verify. Apparently, his mother is not a Christian, and And she spent a lot of time with his mother, and his mother got her to step outside of the space of being in the Bible, but that's not the only reason. I mean, she was involved in some things that the father didn't know because the father trusted her. And he said, I should have verified, and I didn't verify. And then he asked me, your kids have your kids have phones? And I said, just my oldest daughter. Do you check your daughter's phone? I said, yeah, I sure do. I have an app on the phone that I monitor her all the time. Like, okay, apparently he didn't do that. I'm no better than him. And he is a better Christian than I ever wish to be. But I love to learn from other people's mistakes. And I've made my own share of mistakes. But as children, as children of God and as Christians, the more you can learn from other people's mistakes, the better. You know that? You know, they say that wise people learn from other people's mistakes, but foolish people insist from learning from their own, right? So I made a determination that I'd rather learn from other people's mistakes. And even a person like Alan Williamson, and of course you don't know him from Adam, but he is one of the most spiritual person I know in my life. And actually I got to tap into his brain in the 2 weeks that I've been with him practically every day, into what do you do? And when he told me some of his routine, I was like, wow. You know, I asked him, so what is your morning routine? And he says, well, I wake up and I pray, and then I study, and then I meditate. He's like, what do you mean, study? He said, meditate? Yes. And he told me what meditation on the Word of God is. How you read the Bible, and you stay quiet and just read the Bible, and then you meditate. Not looking at other sources, just kind of read the Bible and just try to come up with your own mind of what the passage. And he does that as a routine every day. And he told me how he studies hours every day. He's like, how do you do it? Well, if you make time for it, you can do it. But that's how spiritual strength comes from. But again, awesome person. I enjoy so much being with him. And I wanted to start with that because aside from others benefiting from my presence there, I also benefited a lot. And I come back after being 2 weeks, spending time being with the church, and I felt very energized and very refilled spiritually, because I've been in the presence of some great people, not just him, but even other people of faith that I met there, some very old friends. But keep that in mind, and that stayed with me. That stayed with me when he mentioned that, he told me that to be very careful what you do with your kids. Make sure you know what they are doing. And actually, not surprisingly, that's a picture of my mother and my son there trying to eat something, and my other two cousins. My mother kept on telling my son, stay home, don't go to church. Because of course I would have Bible studies pretty much every day. And when Bible studies midweek, and my mother, don't go to church, Mark, stay home, play with the kids, you know? And it's like, made me think of what Alan said. And you know what? That's what the world will try to do to you. And it reminded of all the things that I would have to go through when I was in Romania. When my mom was telling me how stupid I was, that I'm going to the Bible. I'm going to study the Bible. And, you know, I'm spending time with old people. And that I don't go to enjoy my life with the other people that right now have ruined marriages, by the way. Back in Romania, right? So, yeah. So, Mark didn't speak much Romanian language, but the only thing he knew because he heard it so many times. Mark stai acasă cu Maya means Mark stay home with grandma, and Mark knew the only thing he knew in Romania is how to say, I want to go with daddy, which is vreau să merg cu tata. He was conditioned that way. He knew he didn't have a choice. And my mother was like, please, but you don't understand anything they say, because I was preaching Romanian, right? And Mark is there like, did you understand anything but they said? Just numbers he understood, he said earlier to me. So if I say open to Mark chapter 5 verse 13, he will only understand 5 and 13. Everything else is like talking in tongues. So so my mother tries so hard to get him to not follow me. And you know, it really bugs me because a couple of years ago my mother was really pressing that my daughter go to Romania to study, go for university over there, because a few years ago she wanted to become a doctor. Now she changed her mind. But you know, the worst thing about being a doctor is that you pay a lot of money. Did you know that? You have to pay, like, when you're done with medical school in this country, you end up having like $750,000 debt. But in Romania, you can do it for very cheap. And what a great thing, you know? You can go there and stay with my mother. And you can imagine every single Sunday, oh, you don't have to go to church. Oh, you don't have to do this. Oh, you go to church again. She'll do the same thing she did to me, and it'll be the most stupid thing that I could ever do. So that reminds me, these 2 weeks, why Elena is never going to go to Romania to go to university, because that would be spiritual destruction for her, as far as I'm concerned, with having somebody in your ear constantly telling you, don't do that, don't do that, oh, that's stupid, oh, that's bad, constantly. I tried to talk my mother into seeing the gospel again in the Word of God, and she kept on saying, good enough for my parents, good enough for me. No thank you. No thank you. So very sad. But anyways, I just want to tell you that in your life, you will have people trying to deter you, to pull you away from the Word of God. And it can happen. It can happen to the most spiritual people. It can happen. It can happen to the most spiritual people. So it can happen to you and me if we're not having our eyes big as onions. So, very important to have that in mind. And the reminder, that shouldn't be no surprise that the parents and family will come against us, even in this world. Matthew chapter 10 verse 34 says, do not think, Jesus there speaking, that I came to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's enemies will be those of his own household. He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. So we should know that, and we should not be surprised when we have enemies, and I'm not talking blood enemies like they're going to kill you, although you want to talk about how to treat your brother in the Bible? We'll go no further than Cain, how Cain treated Abel, right? So there is a scriptural way of treating your brother. No. So very worldly way, but that can happen in the family, and it may not be murder, but you can expect when you turn to God that that's going to alienate your family, even those that are the closest to you, and you should have your guard up, and you should not let them. You should not let them influence you, because if you're weak, you will be taken by the wave, and you will be influenced, and you will be taken away. I was talking to someone else there, and they were telling me about this kid. He's in his 20s right now, and I was telling him, hey, I like this kid. He's a great kid, and he was telling me, because I was, thinking of the prospects of studying with him, and he was telling me, yeah, that's true, but he's given to a lot of thistles. That's how we call them in Romania. Thistles and weeds, in this country is weeds. In our country, in Romania, is anything that comes out of the ground that is, bad, right? Like comes among the wheat, and it's prevalent there too. When I was there, drugs were not prevalent, but now drugs are prevalent there. So, and he was telling me, I'm like, wow, yeah. So if you're not strong, the wave will take you. You will not be able to be grounded. If you are a teenager, or if you are in your 20s or 30s, you're going to think you'll be so strong, and those drugs are going to take your brain and turn into mush. When I saw that guy, I thought I knew something was weird about him, and then I knew why later when he told me that he's using drugs. So it happens everywhere, but as Christians, we should be aware. We should be aware that for many reasons, the world is going to take the influence and it's going to take us away from God if we're not careful. And those influences will be as close as is in your own family. So we have several studies, as I mentioned, and that's some of the studies. One of the studies, a picture from one of the studies that we had at one of the apartments there where we were. And that's several of the men there that we are having. Some of those ladies is one of the person's wives, and there are other people there on this side. But one of the things that really stayed with me and that really affected the church there a lot is that most of the men, as a matter of fact, as Romania continues to be a very young democracy and rate of pay is not very high there, is for people to go and work in other countries. And then they would go to other countries like the Middle East, all over Europe. I mean, often places that there's no church. And then they would go months at a time, leaving the church there by themselves. So they have like at least all the men there in the picture actually. That gentleman right there, 1, 2, that's a kid. 3, that's from Bucharest. 4, 5. So 5 men. Imagine you have a church of about 12 people, half of them being, more than half of them being females, and then every 6 months, 5 men take off and go to some other countries where they stay 4 to 6 months. You can imagine the impact on the church. So that's one of the things that was very tough to battle. Now, the church there has come a long way because many years ago, the church they actually went into non-existence for a while because everybody either fell away or there was no longer, didn't even meet anymore. And then it formed again with some of the older Christians that came together, and now they have their own place. Long story actually, because it was when it was a preacher there that left, and a house was sold and it was left to one of the Christians, and that Christian actually kept on the money and didn't want to give the money back. And now after about 10 years, that person finally decided to give at least some of the money back, I understand. And then they're able to buy like another place where they worship now. Quite a bit of drama. But one of the things that stay with me is that the influence that men have when they're not present, when they're not there. And it made me think of, and I talked to some extent about places like passages like in Hebrews 10:25 where it says, it talks about forsaking the assembling. I mean, you cannot expect to have a strong church if pretty much 90% of the men, the able men, there's a few men remain that are like teenagers or something, okay? And of course, they're not equipped. They've probably just been baptized like a few months ago. I mean, those men and a bunch of women that are complaining about the men, now you know why, right? I think they have a reason. They do. It'll be very hard. I mean, it's one thing when one person leaves and then you miss them. But, when everybody goes, it takes a big toll on the church. And we are trying to explain, they're arguing that forsaking doesn't mean that you don't come to services once. Forsaking means you're done with it. You don't come back. And a passage that came up in Matthew 27, if you remember, when Jesus was on the cross, he says, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Guess what? That forsaking occurred a little bit, but it was forsaking. So we cannot expect in our life to have strong families, to have strong churches if we are missing in action. We can't. And this is one of the things that we focus there on because that's what was needed for the church there. And problems with attendance occur in every church that I've ever been to. But the striking thing about this congregation, it's one thing for one person to go out and travel and come back, but it's a whole different thing when all the men go out for 6 months. And then when they're gone, who preaches? Well, it's very tough for the church, and that's what happened there. What happens there on an ongoing basis. And trying to convince those people that actually there's other jobs here, it was not easy. So when we're trying, this is some of the things that we discussed, when I was there, the fact that when we forsake the assembly, we are saying that God is not the most important thing in our life. No matter how you put it, Sunday morning comes, I can sugarcoat that, tell you what you want to hear, but the bottom line, Sunday morning comes, you can do a million things on Sunday morning. It's choice. It's a choice. Nobody has a gun to your head to say you should do this or that. We have freedom in this country. Jesus says, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness. So we can't really say on Sunday morning when we're not here that we are putting God first. We have all sorts of reasons that we come up with, and I am not here to beat you over this passage to tell you, that you gotta do better. I know that you do know you gotta do better in that regard, and I know some personal stories that some people are caught in certain events that maybe you do it for a period of time or something. That this is not something permanent, or you're working to get to a place that you're in a better position. You acknowledge that God is very important in your life, but we need to understand that the purpose of coming together as Christians is to edify, encourage, support one another. And if you're not here, if I'm not here, I cannot encourage you. You cannot encourage me. We cannot encourage each other. This morning we talked about prayer in classes, and of course, not everybody was here for that, but how powerful to learn about how prayer is supposed to help us in anxiety, in troubles, how answers prayers. So when we forsake the assembly, we are saying to our children, because that's really the focus here, we are saying to our children that worshiping God is not that important. So if we train our children to believe that missing worship service is not a big deal, when they get older, guess what they're going to say? Well, if it's okay with daddy, it's okay with me, right? Because these kids kids, this is one thing I hate about kids. They don't just do what you tell them to do. They insist on doing what they see in you, right? No, do what I tell you. No, show me. Show me. So, how can we show our children that God must come first in their lives when we give up to priorities? Any priorities, any reason is good enough reason for us to not be at services. The answer is, we can't. We can't. And there's so many reasons in this world. If there's a soccer game in Romania, or there's a football game here, one of the reasons I heard when I was there, I asked, well, where is this person? And they say the most craziest reason. They say, well, they didn't come to church. Why? Oh, their children, they were asleep and they didn't want to wake them up. Like, wow. That's a crazy reason. You don't wake up the children, that's a good, because they were sleeping. Okie dokie, that's a reason, I guess. But that's not in the best interest of their kids, for sure. Not setting the right example, for sure. So our children need to grow up seeing their parents put God first in their lives, so they will follow their godly examples. I have here, speaking of that, because I had another study with another member of the church there. Her name is Rodica there in the left at the table, and we studied with her actually quite a bit of time. And the focus of the conversation is because her husband used to be a member of the church. He used to be a member of the church, but then fell away. And now he's no longer a member of the church. For several years, actually, he's no longer a member of the church, dealing with all sorts of bitterness. And if you talk to him, there's all kinds of reasons why. And very sad, because he's going to get lost. He's going to be lost. There's no way. He's been out of step with the Lord for a number of years now. But the saddest part of that is that he has two children. He has two children right there. The name of that gentleman right there, his name is Julian. And that young lady, her name is Crisarina. I was actually, when her mother, Rodica, was born, when she gave birth to Crisarina, I was in the hospital doing rounds, part of my medical school, because I was there, and I saw that girl, Crisarina, before her mother did. I wasn't comfortable to be there when she gave birth, right? But I went there, I was outside waiting when she gave birth, and then I went right after. And then I saw her before the mother did, because there was a complication. Took the child away, the mother was out. But I remember she was this big, and now they're both in their late 20s. I think he's in his 30s. And guess what? He obeyed the gospel, but he's not faithful. And then she never obeyed the gospel. They're both very confused. And guess what the reason is? Well, the father is very confused. And they didn't have that leadership. When the father is not a Christian, when the father goes one way, the chances of actually the kids going the same way are very high, unfortunately. But that is just a very strong statistics. So it is very, very sad when the men doesn't exercise their influence, doesn't exercise their leadership that they need in the family, and then the children fall away. So fathers, as we know, have been charged by God to bring up children and the training and the admonition of the Lord. What happens if you don't bring your children in the nurture admonition of the Lord? Well, they don't learn, therefore they fall away and they go to hell as a result, which is very sad. But I experienced that over there, and that was very, very discouraging. Yet, it's just another motivator for us to preach what it means for a father to be there, for a father to do his job, knowing that it's not just about you. You have a responsibility as a father. And yes, mother have responsibilities too, big responsibility. I would even say greater. They do more than they actually should at least in our country. when it comes to homeschooling, for instance. You know, they think that the mother should do it. I read the statistics that in this country, you know, 90% of kids that are homeschooled by their mothers. Mothers are the ones that are teaching the children. Fathers don't take such active role in teaching the children, yet the scripture says fathers are the one charged to train up the children. So how can you train up the children if you're not even there? It's very sad, but that should make us think, because what could happen to this poor lady that is trying to save herself and save her soul and the children and the father just by being on her own is very hard. It's very hard. So that takes me to a question that I have, because we're talking about men's influence, and the question is, what does it take for a father to have influence? I call that the ultimate homeschooling, and that is to be a good teacher. That is to be a good teacher. And you know, there is a great need of teachers in our culture today and in our homes today. I know some of you are teachers already, and some of you want to be teachers, but in the time that I have left, another 7 minutes, I think that clock is ahead, I will talk a little bit about the responsibility of a father to teach, because this is some of the things that we discussed in Romania, because unless a father teaches their children, the chances of them actually getting to know what they need to know is very small. So, one of the things about teaching that we need to know that only 1/3 of teaching is the words you say. Did you know that? And that's true in everything. Even when you preach, only 1/3 is words. Good teaching actually is what is called persuasive teaching, and that is when we're trying to change a person's thoughts and action. That is really teaching. It's sad that in this culture, people say, well, they can do whatever they want. It's just like when you go to school to learn math, and the teacher says, hey, this is math, but 2 and 2, who cares? You can be whatever you want to be. Is that what a teacher does? No. Is that what you teach? No. No, 2 and 2 is 4. And you know, that's what a parent's supposed to do. Son, there's one God. No, there's not 15 other religions. There's just one God. There's Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Settle that. Somebody telling you that he's not actually Son of God, you know. No. Jesus Christ, Son of God. Get that straight fixed in that child's head. You need to tell them, convince them, persuade them so they can believe it. Believe the truth. Nowadays, you know, who cares? The sun, sky can be whatever you want it to be. Sun, blue, but on some days can be... No. You have to teach the child. So, that's what persuasive teaching is. So, the Greek philosopher, actually, Aristotle, thought that all persuasive teaching has 3 parts, and that is ethos, pathos, and logos. And no, I'm not talking in tongues. Ethos means character, pathos means passion, logos means words. So every time you teach, you have to have all these 3. As an effective teacher, you have to have character, you have to have passion, and you have to say the right words. Every person actually who listens to a teacher subconsciously evaluates the teacher by these areas to determine whether or not they will believe what the teacher is saying. Right? So the first one is ethos, which is character. If you are a teacher, whoever you're trying to teach will ask themselves, how do you live? You as a teacher. Before a word comes out of your mouth, the audience needs to know that you're credible, a person of good character. Why should they listen to you? Are you respectable? Are you trustworthy? Do your beliefs and actions align, especially outside of church? You see, this is not words. Nobody wants to listen to a teacher who doesn't practice what they preach. Can you imagine listening to a preacher coming here telling you how to love your wife when the person is a cheater? Sure. Right. Strong message, right? You can say the most beautiful words in the world, but if you don't have character, forget it. Right? Waldo Emerson, very, very bright mind, he said, what you do speaks so loudly, I cannot hear a word you say. I'm sure you heard that before. So, what you say is not enough. You have to have a good character as a father, as a teacher. So the second one is passion. In evaluating passion, the audience asks, how do you feel? Can you speak? You can speak the most well-crafted words, but if the audience doesn't feel the emotional connection, yes, emotional connection is very important. You will fall on deaf ears. So are you passionate about what you're teaching? Can the audience feel your passion, and does your message resonate with your audience at that emotional level? Has it impacted you? Who wants to listen to a teacher who doesn't feel what they're saying? Can you imagine me coming and telling you about the passion for Christ, and I have no passion? Kind of hard, right? Last one, in evaluating logos, it's how you say it, the words you use. Although logos is typically, or most teachers start thinking, now words is everything, I don't know what to say. That's just 1/3. Words is not everything. You live right, you have a character, you have a passion, and then the words will come too. Although words are important too. So your words are still very, very important. But you need to ask yourself, is the message clear? Does it make sense? Is it logical? Do they understand it? This is one of the biggest mistakes in my workplace. And I keep on telling everybody, guys, supervisors, managers, yes, you told them once, is not enough. They didn't get it. You have to say it again. But Nico, I told them 3 times. It's not enough. Sometimes it takes 7 times. Have you told them 7 times? No. Okay, then put it in a memo, put it in an email, put it on a board. Repeat it in every huddle every day. And maybe they'll get it. And then you have to still repeat it for a month. You know, at work, when there's something new coming up, I tell the supervisors and managers that report to me, guys, I want this thing in the huddle for a full month. At every huddle. Every time you meet them, say it every morning, every morning, every morning, every morning. There's once an issue about people not parking in the right places, right? They're parking in the neighbors' places and they're complaining. And they're like, okay, we need to discipline these people. Well, have you told them? Yes, I told them. Well, tell them again. Tell them again. Tell them again. Well, told them for a whole month. Then nobody was parking in the bad spots, in the wrong spots anymore because they got it. So a lot has to do with the teacher. What you say, how you say it, repeat it, make sure they get it. Nobody wants to listen to a teacher who fumbles with words, right? So a good teacher sharpens his words, which will sharpen the mind. No mistake about it. It's your responsibility as a teacher, when you let a word come out of your mouth, to be a sharp word, not just any word. A word well spoken. Right? The scripture says that well spoken words is like golden apples on a tray of silver. So make no mistake about the power of the rightly selected words to get a message across. Sharp thoughts, sharp words. Keep that in mind. So, ethos, pathos, logos, you may say, so what? Who cares about some Greek philosopher, right? Aristotle. Who's this guy? But you know, the Bible echoes the teaching. Paul references all 3 of these parts in persuasion in 1 Thessalonians, in chapter 1, verse 5 says, our gospel came to you not only in words, logos, but also in power and in the Holy Spirit with full conviction. See that? Pathos. And you know the kind of man we prove to be among you. You see, you have to prove that you are a certain kind of man, certain kind of person, so the message is powerful for your sake. So keep that in mind. So Paul certainly understood that teaching is more than just words we say. And let us not forget as teachers, because all of us in this room are teachers, whether it's for our children right now, or in the future as grandkids, or if you don't have kids, it's for your neighbors, for all those that you're teaching. Some of you are aspiring teachers, and you will not be a teacher, a good teacher, unless you build all of these into your lifestyle as a teacher. So yes, only 1/3 is of effective teaching is the words. 2/3 is the person you are, the person you have to work on yourself to be. So I have one more story actually about while we were there, we met with this young lady. Her name is Veronica, and she actually was a Christian, and then she went back into the world because she married a person that she had no right to marry because he was divorced. And then she went back into the world, and she knows she's going to hell. But she says, I love him more than I want to go to heaven. And it's like, wow, that's insane. But that's who that person, and it was so emotional to have a person, to see a person like this. And now she's been married now for about 20 years. And all of a sudden now, in talking with us, and she was saying that, it's not all that I thought. All of a sudden now she's got 2 kids, both in adultery from this marriage that is not scriptural. And she says that, you know what? Life is hard. Life is hard. And indeed, it made me think of the parable of the lost sheep, because she was a person that she was very much lost. Jesus talks about the parable of the lost sheep, but the thing there says about the sheep, in order for that sheep to come back, the sheep needs to return. Oftentimes the Bible Jesus compares us Christians with a sheep. Sometimes I wish Jesus chose a different animal, because sheep are really dumb. When I was there, I went with Mark on a farm, and there were some sheep there, and as soon as they saw us, I was scared, back into the thing, like, sheep are not very smart animals. They're not. They need help. They need somebody to feed them. They need somebody to water them, to take them to where the pasture is. A lost sheep is not going to, unless the lost sheep is found, it's not going to be alive for very long. So that is why Jesus tells them, follow me, follow me, follow me. Because a sheep's job, if she wants to keep alive, is just to follow. Unfortunately, sometimes sheep have bad excuses and go places and they don't follow Jesus. But it's very important for us as a sheep to keep following Jesus. And to just not be given to any excuses. And that's the message that we're also sharing with the Christians there. So, at the same time, we need to know that there's a difference between a lost sheep and a runaway sheep. Did you know that? Some sheep, they just get lost. And some sheep, they run away. Speaking of the runaway sheep, actually, Jesus. Did you know that Jesus did everything for you to be saved? But if you run away, Jesus, there's nowhere in the scripture that he says that Jesus is going to chase after you as you're running away like that crazy sheep. Jesus, wait, stop, come back. Right? Jesus did not do that. As a matter of fact, in John chapter 6, we see there an event to where, in verse 66, says, from that time something happened, and many disciples went back and walked no more with Jesus. In 67, what did Jesus say to the 12? Oh, go after them. No. Do you want to go too? Well, yeah. He did everything for us. He couldn't do more than what he did. And then we're going to run away and Jesus is going to come chasing after us? I don't think so. If you run away, you're on your own. You're on your own. Do you also want to go away? Do you also want to run away? I have one more picture and then the lesson is yours. Because guess what? We found the runaway sheep when we were there. Mark captured on a piece of picture. This is a picture that Mark took. This is a picture of the runaway sheep. I kid you not. This is actually a skull of a sheep. Right? And it made me think of what happened to a runaway sheep. And it made me, I kid you not, that's not a picture I found on Google, okay? Mark took that picture. Yeah, so that's what happens when you run away from God. So, you may not be in that stage quite yet, but you better be sure that if you run away from God, that is going to be your ultimate fate. So, my time is up. I could speak a lot more, but I want to close by asking you, are you a runaway sheep right now? Because if you're a runaway sheep, if you're not following Jesus like a smart sheep, not there's such thing, but like a smart sheep can follow Jesus, if you don't follow Jesus, and if you don't listen to his voice, if you don't follow after him, that is your state. So that is going to be the state of your relationships. That's going to be the state of your faith. That's going to be the state you're looking at it right there. So I'm asking you right now, if you're standing here, what stage are you in? And if you are runaway sheep in any way, or lost, or however, I'm asking you to do something because you end up like that poor sheep. So with that said, if there's anything we can help you, please come forward and we'll help you however we can. We can do that even now. Together we'll stand, and Jim will lead us in closing song.